On to the second paragraph. The first sentence is really simple. Not so. Of course, it's referring back to the last sentence of the first paragraph, which said, now we thought at least some of it was safe. And it's saying, no, it wasn't safe. So, what are we going to say about this sentence? Well, what about the little word so? So can be an argument marker. It can indicate that what follows it is a conclusion. But is that what it's doing here? I don't think so. As we just saw, like in I don't think so, the word so can be used in many ways where it's not an argument marker. And this is saying it's not so. It's not that way. So there's no argument here. So that would get marked with a big N for nothing. Now, what about shocking as it sounds? Shocking. Well, is shocking always bad? Remember we saw in the first paragraph the word stunning. Well, stunning stuns you and shocking shocks you, and it's telling you that you have some kind of reaction, but it's not telling you whether that reaction is due to the thing being good or the thing being bad. You can get shocked by something good or bad. It can be shockingly good or shockingly bad. And so the word shocking by itself doesn't indicate that it's E plus or E minus, so again, we get a nothing. I mention it only because it's clear that Robert Redford thinks that shocking is bad, that this should not have happened. He's suggesting that it's bad, but the word shocking itself is not an evaluative word. What about as it sounds? Well, he's saying that it sounds that way. He's not saying that it is that way. He's not saying that it may sound that way. He's saying that it does sound that way, which is to say it seems that way to him, which is not to say it really is true, so he's guarding the claim. He's not saying that it really is shocking. He's saying that it seems shocking, so he's guarding the claim in order to avoid someone objecting that it's not really all that shocking after all. He's saying, well, it sounds shocking, and in order to make that part of his argument more defensible, because it's not really essential to his argument that it's shocking or not. So what's supposed to be shocking? Clinton's Bureau of Land Management, or BLM, has approved oil drilling within the monument. Notice that there's no guarding at all here. He just states it. They did it. They approved oil drilling within the monument. And that's because it's not really something he's arguing for. He's actually opposed to it. It's something that his opponents might support, but he doesn't. So he doesn't want to guard it, since he wants to say it just happened as a matter of fact that they approved it. So there's nothing that we need to mark in that particular sentence. Next sentence. BLM, or the Bureau of Land Management, has given Conoco Incorporated, a subsidiary of the corporate giant DuPont, permission to drill for oil and gas in the heart of the new monument. Well, there's a lot going on here that we could mention. BLM has given Conoco a subsidiary. That explains how they got permission by citing the BLM. It's a subsidiary of the corporate giant DuPont. He's certainly suggesting that giant suggests that he's the small guy, up against the big corporate giant. And it might even have some connotation of corporate giants being bad, but it doesn't actually say that. And so, again, giant should be marked as nothing. What about permission? To say that someone's permitted to do something is to say that it's not wrong. That's what permitted means. Now, of course, if you're talking about a legal permission, then to say that it's permitted is to say that it's not legally wrong. It's not forbidden by law. It still might be morally wrong, but at least it's legally permitted means it's not legally forbidden. And so if forbidden and wrong are evaluative words, to deny them and say it's not wrong looks like an evaluative as well. But one of the interesting things about this evaluative word is it's not clear whether it's positive or negative. It means it's not wrong, but that doesn't mean it is good or is right. It simply means it's not forbidden. So it's not clear whether to put plus or minus. I'll just leave it as a plain E in that case. Okay? Now, what did they have permission to do? to drill for oil and gas in the heart of the new monument. Okay, that's what the permission was, a permission to do. The word to there is not being used as an argument marker in this case, because you can't say they give permission in order to, right? What they gave permission to do was to drill. Okay, what about drill? Well, clearly Robert Redford doesn't want them to drill, so he thinks that's bad, but he doesn't say it's bad, he just calls it drilling. And they're drilling for oil and gas. Well, a lot of people think that oil and gas are good things, but they don't say here that they're good. They're simply saying that they're oil and gas. The coolest part of this sentence, I think, is that metaphor at the end. I mean, you've got this image that there's this poor monument and somebody's drilling right in its heart. You know, like what could be crueler than to drill in the heart of a young monument, the poor innocent thing? So this metaphor of the heart is a nice rhetorical device that fits with the drilling and is building up people's opposition to what Redford wants them to be opposed to. But it doesn't actually give an argument. It's just stating it in a flowery or metaphorical way that'll get their feelings going. Okay? You may wonder. Notice he doesn't say you do wonder. He says you may wonder. So this is, tell me, a guarding term. So you should mark it with G. You may wonder, as I do. As is sometimes used as an argument marker, but here you're not saying that you wonder because I do or I wonder because you do. The word because can't be substituted for as. So to say as I do is simply to conjoin the two and say you wonder and I also wonder. Or you may wonder because I don't know whether you are or not, and I do. And what we wonder is, how can this happen? Now we have a rhetorical question. How can this happen? Well, that's obviously suggesting it shouldn't have happened. You know, how could something have gone so wrong as it did in this case? But he doesn't actually say that. He simply asks the rhetorical questions. And that's really the trick of rhetorical questions. Notice there are a bunch of them here. Wasn't the whole purpose this? Didn't the president say he was doing this? Then these three sentences in a row are all rhetorical questions. So what's the trick of rhetorical questions? The point of a rhetorical question is to get you to give the answer. If I say, how can this happen? And someone thinks to themselves, well, the government messes up all the time. Then you've got that audience member who answered the question to be saying it themselves. And there's nothing more forceful in an argument than to get your audience to say it themselves when you don't have to say it. And that's the trick of a rhetorical question. And what Redford's doing here is putting three of them right in a row so that you'll have to go along with him 3 times in a row, and then that obviously has an effect on your feeling like you're with him, on you feeling like you agree with him. That's the effect he's trying to create by using these rhetorical questions. Okay, what's the whole purpose of creating? Notice the whole purpose is to preserve. That phrase, the whole purpose, goes with it because we say the purpose is to preserve. And there, as before in the previous paragraph, we're signaling an explanation. Because if you want to explain why Clinton created the monument, then the answer was to preserve the colorful cliffs and sweeping arches and so on. So this is going to be an explanation, and to say that's the purpose is to say that you created it because you wanted to preserve, or in order to preserve. Then this whole purpose marks the conclusion, and the to preserve marks the premise. And we have a little argument. He wanted to preserve his colorful cliffs, therefore he created the monument. And we've got the conclusion marked by the whole purpose, and the premise or the reason marked by the word to. Okay, preserve, we've already seen a word a lot like that, namely protect. And we saw that when you protect something, it has to be good. Preserve also means to preserve it against things that would harm it. If harm's bad, then preserving and protecting against harm must be good. So we can mark that as E+. It's colorful cliffs. Colorful sounds good, but of course colorful just means it's colorful. Sweeping arches. Broad and sweeping in curves. Well, that sounds good. It sounds beautiful the way he describes it. And it surely is, as you can see in any picture. But sweeping doesn't itself say it's good or beautiful or so on. Another, extraordinary. We already saw extraordinary. So colorful, sweeping, and extraordinary, they're certainly being used here by Redford to suggest that these are good, but they're not openly saying they're good, so we don't want to mark those as evaluative words. But resources, now resources are things that can give you abilities. When you have more resources, you're able to do more. So abilities sounds like a good thing, and resources are the things that make you more able. They give you more freedom and more power. So at least many people would want to mark that as an E+ word. Some of these are going to be questionable. They're not as obvious as others. So I'm suggesting one way of interpreting this passage, and I hope you're following along. But if you have some questions about the particular cases, that's going to be natural. It's partly because our language is not totally precise. Okay? Large-scale mineral development, well, that's not bad if it's done in the right places, so I don't think that's evaluative either. Didn't the president say that he was saving these lands? Well, didn't the president say that he was saving these lands? Well, that suggests that he's assuring you that, in fact, he was saving these lands. He should know whether that's what he was doing, since, after all, that's what he, did himself, so he should be able to say what he did and why. Didn't the president say he was saving? Saving could be marked as E+, just like protect and preserve, because it saves it from something bad happening. These lands from mining companies for our children and grandchildren. Now, what about the word for? This explains, again, why he's saving these lands. He's saving them for our grandchildren and children. That means the reason for saving these lands is to benefit our grandchildren and children. So for is going to be a reason or premise marker. It marks the reason or premise that justifies saving the lands and explains why, in fact, the president did want to save the lands. Okay? So now we're through with paragraph 2, and I hope you're kind of getting the feel for how to do close analysis. And so what I want to do now is give you a chance to practice the skill on your own. We'll put up paragraph 3, mark certain words, and your task in the exercise will be to put the right letter next to or to indicate the function of that word in the paragraph. And the letter you put should be either R or P for premise marker, C for conclusion marker, A for assuring, G for guarding, D for discounting, E+, E- for positive and negative evaluation. And you can go through the third paragraph yourself in the exercise.